This is going to be one of the most important chess videos that you are ever going to watch because I am going to teach you a new way of playing chess. And if you are willing to change your mindset and watch this entire video, you are going to see a massive result in your games. This strategy is not going to make you a grandmaster. That would be false if I would say that it would help you do that. But this strategy can help you to beat at least everyone up to about 2000 online rating. Because most chess games are actually just still decided by very simple blunders. And we are going to try to use that to our advantage. So what do I actually recommend that you should do? We are going to follow a multi-part strategy. First things first, we need to talk about openings. For the opening, I recommend to literally play the most simple opening that we possibly can, while also keeping control of the center. So for the sake of demonstration, I will be keeping it very simple. I put my pawn in the center here. I protect it with my second pawn, and I want to develop my pieces, and I want to castle. The move that I would actually like to play here would be bishop to d3, but I am a little bit annoyed if I give my opponent the opportunity to play knight to b4. So just for the sake of simplicity, I will be playing bishop to e2, and I will castle. So literally, this is what you can play for openings, and this is going to help you get very far. Just simple basics. Pawn in the center, protect it with a different pawn, develop your pieces, and now we are in the middle game. In the middle game, we are going to use a very simple strategy to beat our opponent. Okay. This strategy focuses on making no mistakes. The goal is that we make no mistakes and no blunders, and I am going to teach you exactly how you can do that. So, the first thing that we should always do is look at the opponent's last move. And we need to sit on our hands. We need to look at their move. We need to not immediately respond and first figure out why did they play this. What I like to do is I like to look for CCT for my opponent, which would be checks, captures, and threats. Does my opponent have any checks, captures, and threats? Some people also call this CCA, checks, captures, and attacks. Well, there are no checks. The only capture gives away their knight. And there are no threats or no attacks. So there is nothing I need to worry about. But we do need to double check what our opponent just played every single time so that we don't fall for any simple tricks. I also like just figuring out the purpose behind their move. And here the purpose is very clear to me. They just want to castle. Okay, nothing we have to worry about. Then when we need to make a move, we will also be following a step-by-step plan to find good moves. We will be using the CCTO strategy, which is going to help us find our next move. We should first look for checks. We don't have any. Then we should look for possible captures. We don't have any. Then we should look for threats. I will talk a bit more about threats in a moment. A threat is basically a simple attack. That's the most easy definition of what I would call a threat. We don't have a threat. Then we need to optimize, CCTO, check, capture, threat, optimize. And optimization just means that we want to slowly improve the position. We want to play a move of which we are guaranteed that it's not a blunder so that we can pass the turn back to the opponent. Because all we really want to do is just make a good move, pass the turn back to them and see what they do and repeat this over and over again. They castle, there is nothing we need to worry about. So we can do this CCTO over and over again, but most of the time your new position is very similar to your previous position. So I just see that we have no checks in this position, first of all. We do have a capture, but I don't recommend playing a useless check or a useless capture. For example, this. Yes, we take a pawn, but they just take back and we actually helped them. Because if we play this straight, we help to open up their bishop. There is a general rule that you can follow. The general rule is that unless if there is an ulterior motive, some extra tactic that we can play, you should not capture a central pawn if it can be recaptured by another central pawn. especially this c pawn taking d5. Because if we do this, nothing happens except that we improve their bishop. So we should not do this. All right. I don't see any threats, so I would need to optimize. Knight to c3. That's a very good optimization move. Okay, they play bishop to d7. All right. Well, again, nothing has really changed. I already looked at this move. This doesn't threaten anything. The bishop is very limited, so we need to continue. And by doing this CCTO over and over again, we are eventually going to create a winning position for ourselves. Because at some point, as long as we never make a mistake, the opponent will make a mistake. And if the opponent plays perfectly, then I am okay with a draw. But that's probably not going to happen. So bishop to d7. Okay. So I want to further improve my position. I want to get this bishop into the game. I cannot get this bishop into the game on this diagonal because my pawn is blocking it. So a good optimization move would be pawn to b3. It does weaken our knight. My opponent immediately saw that this weakened our knight, but it's not a problem as we can just simply defend this knight with the bishop. But you do see I am paying attention to what my opponent is doing. My opponent is attacking here and we need to respond to this. So knight to e4 adds another attacker to the knight. Now there are two attackers. Let's just simply defend this. So we just want to make sure that we don't blunder. If the opponent wants to start trading, that's okay. I mean, they can trade. I'm not able to stop them basically from trading if they want to, but I'm not going to initiate any useless trades myself. Okay, the opponent just played f6. And I feel like f6 is a bit of a dubious move in this position because this takes away a possible square from the knight, also weakens the light squared diagonal towards the king. The only good thing about the move is that it does help to support a potential push. The potential pawn to e5 pawn break is what that is called. The pawn move that black can play to open up the position and basically to try to get their bishop into play. However, I don't think it's something we need to be worrying about immediately. Even if they play it, currently d5 would just drop and also we don't have any problems. But I am always trying to figure out what their plan is. So I don't have checks. I don't have captures. I do have a threat. Bishop to d3 as a threat. Why is this move a threat? Well, if my opponent does nothing, let's say they do nothing, I would take and I would take. This is what I call a threat. A threat is a move that basically threatens to win material if the opponent doesn't respond in the correct way. And putting up threats is a good way to put some pressure on the opponent. Because if we play very passively, then the opponent is probably not going to make any mistakes by themselves. Unless if they are quite low rated, they still will. But better opponents, they usually won't make any mistakes by themselves. And that's why we need those threats, those little attacks, basically, those mini attacks, those threats that we can use. We are not sacrificing. We are not playing overly aggressive. We are just making many, many small threats in a row to see what the opponent is going to do and how they are going to respond. So I think we already have our first minor victory because the opponent just moved the same pawn twice. They are wasting some time and still this diagonal has been weakened as well. Okay, we have no good captures because capturing this would be horrible. You never want to help your opponent put a pawn on e4, or as black, you never want your opponent to put a pawn on e5 because that pawn attacks your knight, and after the knight is gone, this becomes a weak pawn and the opponent can start attacking our king side. So we don't want to play this move. It's time to optimize. Let's play an optimization move. For example, rook to c1, rook here on this side of the board. I know a lot of people who struggle to come up with good plans during their chess games, and I'm going to teach you a very simple way to come up with good plans for your games. You should play basically in the direction that your pawns and pieces are aiming. What am I talking about? Well, visually, the pawns are looking here and these pawns are looking here. So these two squares, there's something going on with these two squares. We can just visually see that the pawns are looking in this direction. And that is the direction in which we need to play. So that's already the first thing that I look at. Then the second thing is that all of my pieces are pretty much here on the queen side. So if I color more squares, you would see that also this square, these are squares that we are attacking, maybe even the e5 square. So if I am looking for a good move, it needs to be a move that has something to do with these squares. Okay, so which move could we play? Well, there are many moves that we could play. We could maybe consider pushing c5. We could maybe consider playing b4, adding another pawn to attack one of those squares that I colored in blue. We could maybe consider taking this to open up the file this time for those pieces. That's an exception to what I said before, because we are capturing a central pawn that they can recapture with a pawn, but we are opening up the pieces. Maybe it's not my favorite move still, but it's playable. So b4 makes sense because we are playing on this side of the board where we have that slight advantage. Okay. And what is slowly happening in this game is we are slowly gaining the upper hand on the opponent. We are slowly building what they would call a space advantage, meaning that we have pawns that are attacking into the opponent's position, and by doing this, we are taking away squares from their pieces and potential moves from them. So again, everything is really focused on these three squares that we are attacking. So another good optimization move would be pawn to a4. This is basically what I continuously do during the game. Just CCTO, look for checks, captures, threats, optimize. If you are playing a strong opponent, usually your check capture threat is not really going to give you anything specific to work with, but you can keep optimizing. And when you want to optimize, just use this strategy. As I explained, we play moves that we are guaranteed it's not a blunder, and we play in the general direction of our pieces. All right. Great. Interesting position. They take here. We now have two possible captures. We could capture on c4 and get the bishop to this diagonal, would be great. Or I think we could also capture on e4 and get the queen to the center. And this is a pawn that we will probably be able to pick up in the future. And I actually think that this sequence is more interesting because we are winning a central pawn. We are eliminating a central pawn instead of winning a flank pawn. And also we are centralizing our queen, and we are removing a centralized knight from the board. Basically what I said at the very beginning is already happening in this game. My opponent is starting to crumble. My opponent is starting to make many small mistakes, and this is going to cost them the game. So they just played a5, which is a bit strange. This attacks my pawn, and I could technically capture this. I think I could capture this, but we end up with isolated doubled pawns. That's not really great. They will be able to put pressure against those pawns, and I'm not sure if these pawns will be very useful. I could also just move forward, and moving forward is grabbing space. We are gaining on the opponent. We are taking away yet another square. This time it's a square from their knight. We basically stole a square from them. The c6 square is now our square because they can no longer put pieces there. So this is a very good move, a very good space grabbing move, and a very good optimization move. All right. And they push b6. b6 basically removes a defender from this pawn. Also in this position, after a5, I actually did not mention that. We could grab this pawn here on b7. I almost forgot to mention this. I was actually not really doing my CCTO perfectly, or I should have talked about this. Basically, you have to consider every capture. But this b7 pawn is also known in chess as the poisoned pawn. So when I can win it, most of the time I am very careful with winning it. Because after you win it, your queen might be out of squares. And if we look at this, well, the queen actually doesn't really have that many squares to go back to, right? If I color all the squares that we cannot go to in red, and then I color the squares where we can go to in blue, this is what it would look like. And then I would ask myself, is there one single move that the opponent can play to take away the blue squares without losing a single red square? Then they can trap my queen. Yes, they can play bishop to c6. And now that queen would be trapped. So basically my intuition, my instinct was telling me not to look at queen takes b7. And also I like when they make a threat or when they do something, reacting to that first. But basically, for those of you that were wondering, queen takes b7 would have lost you a full queen. All right. Great. They make a light squared weakness, and it's back to CCTO. Do we have any checks? Captures? No. Threats? Yes, we have a threat. Knight e5 just threatens to win a pawn. Very, very simple. It's a simple threat. Okay. They play knight to d5, improves the knight, also attacks the bishop. The bishop is protected. Don't see any problems. We take here. That's basically a free pawn. They can trade if they want, but we have the rook to recapture. So everything is going great. Okay. Queen to f6. Pay attention. They are threatening to win a pawn. We need to fix this. We have many ways of fixing this. We could move a pawn, or we could protect it with a piece. When I have to make a decision here, if it's about my king's safety, moving the pawn is usually not the first thing that I will think about, because every pawn move always leaves behind a weakness. What am I talking about? If I move this pawn, then this pawn is no longer defended by another pawn, and also the g3 square has been weakened. Okay, so I would like to defend this with a piece, and if I need to defend this with a piece, I would like to do it with the lowest value and most inactive piece that I have available. So I would not do it with my queen, because we are making the queen a defender. The queen is our best piece. We should keep it as an attacker if we can. I could do it with this rook, but that rook was actually useful. However, this rook is currently a useless piece. So let's use our useless piece to protect this pawn so that we have no problems anymore. All right. And slowly we are actually getting a completely winning position here. So we are currently up a single pawn, if I got that right. I think black has 6 pawns and we have 7 pawns. Yes, we are up a single pawn. Being up a single pawn is not enough yet. We need to try to be up 2 pawns. And the moment we are up 2 pawns, we will be thinking about ways to simplify the game, to trade and basically go into an endgame. Okay. So we still need to do our CCTO strategy. We have a check, but we give away the queen. We have a capture, we give away the queen. We also have a capture here, and that's really it. We don't have much of a threat, except maybe the move knight e5. The move knight e5 is a threat. It's a threat because it opens up the rook, and then we might be winning that c7 pawn. So this is a good example of a threat. All right, they move back the bishop, which gives us a free pawn. Great. We are now up 2 pawns. All right. The moment that we are up 2 pawns, we can use a strategy which I call simplifying. It's literally just trading everything and going for the endgame. This is not going to be the most optimal way to play. Like, the most optimal way for us to play would be adding attackers, trying to win even more material. But I always say, the more material you allow your opponent to have, the more material you keep on the board, the bigger your chances are for blundering back the game. And if I start removing all of their pieces, which is exactly what I am doing right here, I am just grabbing all of their pieces, the less pieces they have, the less counterattack they will have. So trading is very important, and now we can also activate our rook here as the final attacker. My opponent makes a horrible move. The queen is their best piece. The queen is the piece that they could use for a counterattack, for a checkmate, but they offer me to take it. Well, if I just take it, now the queen is gone and it's just a simple endgame with rooks. There is really only one thing that could go wrong here, which is that we would get back rank mated, which I don't want to happen. I will fix that in a moment. First, I will actually see if I can pick up this pawn potentially. No, I cannot pick up the pawn. So let's just fix our back rank problem by playing g3. And now we win the game. So this is exactly what I want you to do. Follow CCTO. Win a pawn or two, maybe you'll win a piece, maybe you will get a checkmate, it depends on the level of opponent, and then you just play the endgame. You beat them in the endgame, and if you think my endgames are bad, get better at endgames. It's important to get good at your endgames. If you are up 2 pawns, the endgame is not super complicated. We just have to think, do we have a passed pawn? A pawn that can promote? Yes. Okay, how can we get that pawn to promotion? So there are a million good moves in this position. What I am trying to do is I'm trying to see if I could create this, which would be connected passed pawns, having two passed pawns, but I'll bring my king a little bit closer as well. I don't want to do this and then suddenly lose my pawn. So yes, this goes perfectly. We now have connected passed pawns. My opponent gives me this free pawn here by moving their rook, but I have to say that my connected passed pawns are actually so valuable that I would like to save those instead of just taking that free pawn. Very important in the endgame that you try to get your king to the center, to one of these four squares as quickly as possible, which is what I am doing. I am bringing my king closer. And then the second strategy that you should use in an endgame is what I call the PPP strategy, which simply stands for push passed pawn. If you have a passed pawn, we have two of them, and if you can push it, you should push it. No questions asked. PPP, push passed pawn. Pushing your passed pawn brings it closer to promotion, and the closer to promotion you get, the more winning chances you get. There are again a million ways to finish this, and I think I will finish with pawn e7. They will most likely sacrifice their rook, and now this is a very simple endgame. We can pick up this pawn, we can pick up this pawn, and we actually created a new passed pawn, a new pawn that can be pushed for promotion. So now we can use this pawn, we can go in with the king, and I'm not going to show this entire endgame in depth, because it might actually take some move stills, but this is going to be an easy endgame. If you struggle with this, literally just pick up this pawn and make an extra queen or something. That also helps. But we can also just force this king into a checkmate here. So please try out this strategy and then drop a comment to let me know how it went.